Welcome to Adoption Now, telling your adoption story on your adoption show. I'm your host, April Fallon. We are in season 8 and we are in the new year. Yay! We are on YouTube. So if you want to see this full interview, you can go to Adoption Now on YouTube. If you're listening to us on audio, thank you, because I really do miss just being audio. When you're on video, you're like thinking about I can see myself thinking, and then I'm like, oh yeah, wait, people can see me thinking. If you're new to Adoption Now, we tell stories from the perspective of adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents. My husband and I have 4 children through adoption, and we started this as a radio program in Denver, and now it's become the international podcast you hear today. We are a nonprofit. Thank you so much for donating. That is the way we keep telling stories. So thank you, all of you that donated in 2024. And if you still want to donate, you can for 2025. You just have to go to Adoption Now Podcast and click that donation button. Hey, go to Adoption Now Podcast and check it out, because we have a lot of new things on there, including new content that has an infant adoption guide, a full guide on there for free of everything you need to know to start the process. We know a lot of you have come out of that December time and you are ready to grow your family. Your husband's on board and this is your season. So go ahead and go to adoptionnowpodcast.com and download that free adoption guide. Okay, so we did move our family back to Colorado, and we are still recording in Arizona. I just can't get away from Martin, our producer. He's done an awesome job for the last 2 years, and we appreciate everything that he has done for us. And we also gained a new teammate, which is awesome, from Arizona, Jordan Moreno. She's here with us today. She's doing awesome co-hosting with us. She is an adoptive mother, and she has 1 child through adoption and a biological son. She is crushing it on social media, and we're having a lot of fun with her. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, and check us out on social media. I have to do the plug. Facebook, Instagram, it's both at Adoption Now. We're posting content. We're posting behind the scenes. We are posting giveaways, some freebies. So it's a really good place to be.
Oh, yes. The swag.
The
swag conversation. I am really excited about those bears.
They're cute.
I'm mostly excited about the bears. Does that mean I'm immature? Probably. Okay, so today we are going to talk a little bit about open adoption. The last 2 episodes that we have were on foster care. We had Dave Thomas Foundation, Rita Sorinen, come on, and she talked about how to start that process and the support system you need to be successful if you choose adoption through foster care and if you choose adopting an older child. We also had Darcy on, and she talked about raising teenagers, right? Adoption and teenagers and all of these issues that might come up, or questions that might come up, and you might not be prepared for that, and how to kind of steer them and help them as they're growing. And today we're going to talk about open adoption because I have a lot of stories that happened over the Christmas break that I was like, I need a microphone right now. I need to talk about this because it was kind of an emotional wreck. And I want to talk about today just open adoption. It seems like there are people who do it and they're best friends. And I have so many people in the community and that have come on. They're best friends. Like you said, they're running down the beach
Skipping
together.
down the beach, holding
That's right.
hands.
They're consistently seeing each other. The child is consistently seeing their birth family, right? So they know of them, they're aware. And then we have people on the other side that really never talk to them. I mean, they might say it's open adoption, but the person isn't around. So the child knows of the story, knows it's open if they wanted to contact the birth family. And then we have this medium middle ground, and that's where I am. And I feel like it's really challenging to have birth families pop in and then pop out.
And I feel like that's probably where a majority of families fall. It's a spectrum. There's one side, there's the other, but a majority of families are going to be in that in-between area. And the thing about it is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
Adoption itself is so complex, but with an open adoption, it's gray. It is a gray area. And I think that's something that we need to give ourselves a little bit more grace on as parents is this is the first generation. We are the first generation of parents that are parenting our children with open adoption as kind of that number one standard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the pioneers of this.
We really
we're
are.
like, there is no handbook of what do I do when this happens? What do I do when that happens? I'm sure in many cases it would be easier in a closed adoption to just say, I never have to think of this person again. I never have to talk about it.
Right.
It's harder to be open to those complexities. And so I'm really interested to hear your stories and what you have to say, because you are a few years down the road from where I am in parenting and adoptive parenting, and just being able to have these tools in my tool belt are going to be fantastic.
I don't know if I have any tools, because as much as we talk about it, really when you break it down, it's really challenging and it's hard, and sometimes you don't know how to respond. One of the things that helped me greatly is I have friends that I've been friends with my whole life. I have family, right, that I talk to all the time. And those people were not overly helpful to me because they didn't really know what to say. I mean, I think the answer is, well, why do you do it? If it's hard, you don't really have to talk to the birth family. If the kids struggle with it, why do it? Right? And so I found myself almost having to explain why I'm doing it to them, and not even like getting the answers or help that I personally needed while I was going through it. And now I'll talk about what happened. And maybe some of you are in this middle area too, and it's hard to navigate. And you, of course, have no thought of closing it. I'm with you. There's nothing in my mind that's like, it would be better if we just didn't do this. Nothing. Because I first of all made the commitment to it. Secondly, I do think in the long run, it is absolutely healthier. And third, I feel like I just love birth families so much for the choice that they made. And I think a lot of us feel that way, whether it's closed or open. But I have an open adoption with the girls, and I talk to her a lot. I mean, I can ask her, do they have dairy issues? Now, remember, I have 2 out of 10. So there are 10 siblings. I have 2 of them. So I guess 8 siblings for my girls. But there's a lot of questions about, do they struggle in school at all? Because we're seeing, our children have struggles. So is it dyslexia? Does that run in the family? Right? I have contact with her. And we have FaceTimed before, but it was her talking to the girls, and the girls were a little bit younger. And she keeps asking if we'll come to Florida and visit. And I do want to do that. But out of the blue, right after Thanksgiving, she sent me a message and she said, can we FaceTime? And I have all the kids here because I think she was missing her older daughter. And it just kind of caught me off guard. And we were all getting ready to go to the mall. And so everybody was like ready and dressed, right? You want the kids to like not look like they just rolled out of bed. You want them to like look like, hey, I do care for their hair.
I'm a good parent.
Yeah, hey, I love them. So everybody was like actually ready. And I'm like, sure. Now? And she's like, then she's calling. So I'm sit the girls down really quick. The phone's ringing. I'm like, hey, your birth mom, she wants to talk to you. And they're like, what? Like they weren't ready. They weren't processing it either. And so she comes on, and I think both of them were really caught off guard. But I also think her group of kids were caught off guard, and they all introduced themselves again to the girls and what their ages were and their names, what grade. And we got to one of her sons, and he said, I'm 14. And Malia said, my brother's 14, which is awkward because also he's a brother.
The term brother.
And like then there's his brother. And well, thank God for AJ, which I feel like we say it all the time. But AJ was like kind of listening, and the kid said, yeah, I know. I'm the same age as your brother. And he got so excited. Aww. And then AJ came in and he's like, hey. And they're like, hey. And all the kids, they all remembered AJ.
Of course.
And they think of him as a brother. And they're okay with their sisters that have this brother. Because that could be weird. Like, why? Well, we're your brothers too or whatever. But they don't feel that way at all. They all love AJ. And I just couldn't believe that after all these years that boy remembered he was the same age as AJ. So that was kind of cool, kind of bridged everything. But there were some things that happened in the conversation that I just want to talk about today, because I feel like there's some people out there that are like maybe in the place that we are, where you're absolutely 100% pro open adoption, but you're kind of stuck in the weeds with it. and you feel bad. You feel bad about the whole situation. So even on the phone, Jordan, I was stuffing tears down, and I did not want to cry because this is not about me.
Right.
This is not about April, but my heart hurt so bad that these children aren't with their mom. Like that weighed really heavy on me, and but I love them. So, right, that's a conflicting feeling. I love them. I'm grateful. I know they're where they're supposed to be, and God gave these children to us, and she picked us. I know all those things in my head, but my heart was so overwhelmed with grief that the family is broken up, that there's all these other kids that she has, and that we have these two, and that it's confusing for everybody. That confusion made me very sad.
And you don't know how you're going to react because there's so many layers.
Right.
There's the pain for you, there's the pain for the birth mom, and there's the pain for the kids. And you're all experiencing it simultaneously. And on a whim like that, kind of caught you off guard out of the blue of you were in your true feelings. And, it's not, I'm putting on a brave face for the kids or for the birth mom or anybody else, but sitting in your true feelings, which is probably very good for you too and very therapeutic for you too.
I think it's really healthy, but I think it's hard because you feel something you don't want to feel. I don't want to feel like I'm crying when I'm talking to this family. I don't want to feel overwhelming grief because I don't want my kids to think they're in the wrong place. So it's totally confusing. If you've had this situation, we are with you. I think the number one thing to do, like you said, is be honest with yourself and recognize that two conflicting feelings can remain there as well. You can be 100% so grateful and so happy that you are raising these children, and yet at the same time filled with grief that there's a woman that loves them also, and she's not raising them. And I just felt so much grief for her, even though she wasn't even crying. She was like happy, and she was so happy to see them, and she had so many things to say. And she has another child, so she got pregnant again and decided to parent. So there is a almost 3-year-old, almost 4, but she's identical to my youngest, to Malia. Like literally talk the same, look the same. So Malia was all about, and the little girl was normal and natural because she's not old enough to really understand the complexity of everything. So she was like talkative. But one of the things that she said was, come see my shoes. I want you to see my shoes. And we're like, yeah. And so she brings these shoes out, and they're Nike shoes. They're like $100. And so the birth mom says, oh yeah, I bought all the kids Nike shoes. She's like, it was like $1,000. Okay, I'll tell you why that's hard in a little bit. So my girls are like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I'm thinking in my head, there's no way I'm buying you $100 shoes that you're going to grow out of. So she's like taking them around and showing them all these shoes, which is kind of like an interesting thing to do on a time that you're seeing your daughters, like not saying like, what are you into? But okay, so we're on the shoe thing. We're seeing all the shoes. And then she asked them like a couple questions of what they like to do. And then she related those things to other children. So, oh, you like to dance? Oh my gosh, she likes to dance. Your sister likes to dance. So there was this like great camaraderie of the things that they love are also connected biologically. And that was really sweet. And it wasn't a super long conversation. They asked about Lily. Everybody wants to know, like, how does Lily fit into this? Because they love AJ. She's like, I know you have another one. Where is she? And then Lily was kind of like, oh, hi. And she kind of appeared. And they all said hi to her. And so it felt like there was a lot of unity within these hard conversations. But I was most worried about my children afterwards. So I knew we were going to have to debrief. So this whole thing happens. We say goodbye. She's like, I'm going to send you something for Christmas. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're excited. And then we get off the phone. And then it's like quiet. And I'm like, do you guys want to talk, or do you want to just go to the mall, or do you want?
How do you handle this situation?
Like I want to cry, but I don't want to cry. And Noah's like, let's just go in the car and let's just let them think about it. Well, of course, Malia right off the bat, she's like, that was great, because she's Malia and she's the youngest. But Vivi was she was internalizing all of it. So we get to the restaurant. We decide we're going to go eat. And I'm like trying to ask them, but here's the thing about being open because I say this all the time, be open, but then you don't want to be like, how do you feel? Do you feel good? Do you want to talk about it? Tell me, you're like,
and how are you feeling inside? And how do you feel about our relationship? And what about her? And
do you want to cry? Because you can cry. I feel like crying. Should I cry? Should we all cry? And AJ's looking at me like, Mom,
we're at an Olive Garden. Relax.
Take it down a notch. So Malia's, of course, talking, but this is what really was hard for me to come up with an answer. Was Vivi said, that was great. Like the words she's saying are right. Like that was great. I am so happy. But she said, but did you see their shoes? And I'm like, yeah, they all got shoes. That's so great. And she doesn't say anything. And AJ says, what's really hard, the hardest thing is that when people talk to you about it at school and they say like, why are you adopted? And then Lily said, yeah, that's really hard. Why are you adopted? And we kind of talked about that on the show, right? Well, Vivi said, when they ask me, I might cry really hard. When they ask me, why aren't you with your birth mom? I tell them, because she couldn't take care of us. And then she just blank stared. And I could see in her mind, if she can't take care of us, and she's buying them $100 shoes, and she has $1,000, and they're all sitting in this apartment, there was all of a sudden a hole in her story. And she didn't know how to verbalize that. And I didn't even know what to say, because I know that that's the rehearsed thing that she says to kids. And it's hard for me because I didn't want to be like, well, because they got those shoes doesn't mean that she still can take care of you guys. Like, I just didn't even know where to go with that. Yeah. I just hurt for her. And we kind of just sat there, and I said, I love you, and I don't have the right words to say, but we're going to figure it out, and we're going to pray about it. And I wanted God to just comfort them, because I think as a Christian and as a person with faith, I think I'm so grateful that I can ask the Holy Spirit to come into the situation, right? Where I cannot meet those needs. I can't say the right thing. Please, God, because ultimately these are your kids. But I thought, how confusing for her to have that conversation. And then I have not talked to them since. And like, she never asked like our address to send them anything. And so then I kind of felt like it's like, how you see the movie, promises. Like, yeah, dads like pop in and pop out. And it's hard when they pop in and pop out, because they're not doing life every day, and it stops them, and they have questions, and we don't always have the answer, even with open adoption, right? So I thought about, well, maybe I should reach out to her and have some of these conversations. Ask her, why is it that you place? Because I don't know that I've asked her, because it's kind of a hard question to ask someone, and do I go and start having those conversations with her so that I can help them process that? I mean, it was really big. We ate our food so quietly.
Oh, I'm sure it was a silent table. I'm sure the waiter walked up and was like, so how's it going? Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah. Exactly. Do you feel as if this was kind of a realization period for you as well, that Vivi is now on that other side, right? There's an age, and maybe she hit that within the last year or so, that you either don't really understand it, and kind of your ignorance is bliss, and you're just in that joyful period of being a child and living within your own mind at that age, and then kind of turning a corner to being more aware of the hurt and more aware of those realizations of, why did my mom place me? And how come she didn't with 8 others?
Right.
And what was the difference? And starting to feel kind of that identity shift within herself. Do you feel like you have changed the way that you navigate those conversations based off of their age and their maturity level?
Absolutely. What a great point. Because I think what happens with young adoptees is that they get a story that their parents told them, or maybe they know the whole story, and they say it, and they've said it for so long, right? And they're young, and so their little minds can understand that, and then the other little kids can understand that, and you as a parent can understand that. You're in this happy kind of place where you feel like you're being really honest still, right? And you're right. There comes a point where that story, true or not, there's holes in it. There's questions. Just saying that one statement isn't enough anymore. And I think that critical time is so important for adoptees. And I'll tell you, moms and dads, it will break your heart. It will. Let me cry right now and just tell you, like, it is a painful place for you too, because you recognize that they are more aware. And I think what we've done with adoptees for so long is we've been like, we want you to continue to tell that story, even when you're 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, because we want you to make us happy. And so continue that story. And even though their mind is thinking something else, they're not going to make you mad. So they're just going to continue saying the story. And then when they're 18, they're going to be like, you know what? When I was 9 and we talked to my birth mom and she had these shoes, that was confusing to me, And so how do we as parents go, yes, this is really hard to watch them walk out of that innocent bubble, but we have to do it because I don't want her to stuff it down for so long that then she's angry and she's upset and she's like, I just said all these things to make you happy. It's like, I understand that this is important. It's important for me to say, yeah, you're right. We're in a different place with her.
Mm-hmm. And it's awesome that you and Noah held the space too. Because I think a lot
I didn't
of
know
parents...
we knew we were supposed to, though.
You don't know what you're going to do.
Space, all of a sudden, we're like, oh my gosh.
But you held the space for her to feel the feelings, because these are big feelings that just maturing and becoming her age, this preteen era, is tough regardless.
Right.
Regardless of what's happening, they are forming their own identity left and right, and their brain is firing in different ways every single day. So for you guys to be able to hold that space, that she was comfortable, it's clear, and you guys should feel good that it's clear she was comfortable to tell you what she was feeling. She wasn't afraid to hurt your feelings. She wasn't afraid. She didn't feel like she had to stuff it down and wait till she was 18 and then blow up on you. You guys really held the space for her. And so I think that is healthy too. And I'm sure so hard to hold the space. And I feel like as parents, a lot of the times we put our own needs to the side. We put our own wants to the side for the betterment of our children. And, the child always comes first. And I feel like you guys really, you did that. You did that in real life.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I didn't feel... You don't
course
feel
you don't.
the way you think you're going to feel. But I did say to the kids as we're quietly like eating noodles, I just said, I want you to know that whatever feeling you feel is not going to make us mad or anything that we're crying with you. We want to feel with you. So if you feel confused or upset, we also feel that with you. We thank God that you're here. You're in the right place. I want to always instill confidence. You're in the right place. Why? We might not have that answer right now. And even on the calling for our children, right? We don't even know what that is. Why they would have, been placed with us kind of evolves as they grow up too. And so it makes more sense as time goes. But as they're really trying to get those answers down, and now what do I tell my friends? Because I could see Vivi be like, now what do I tell them? When they say, why are you adopted? She can't take care of me? Well, I don't know. I think she can because they have nicer shoes than we do, And so I said to her, because she's an introvert, and I just said, you know what? Let's just have fun, guys. If that's what you guys want to do. They were all like, yes, please. And I'm like, I told Noah, we need to keep telling her, whether it's when we put her to bed, whether it's tomorrow. And she did come to us the next day. Noah and I were having coffee in the sitting room, and she came and she sat next to me, and she said, I just want to tell you, I don't know how I feel about it.
And that's fair too.
She's like, I thought about it, and I honestly don't have the words, and it's hard for me to get them out. I don't know how I feel. And I said, okay, and you don't have to know. You can just, go for it. Do you want to not talk to her? Because that's an option too when they get older.
Right.
Do you want to not do this?
She's able to make those decisions for herself
And
now.
even though we made a promise, if the birth parent is not consistently building a relationship and popping in and out, and they're like, no, I don't want to do this, then I have to honor that. You have to have a conversation, right? But she didn't. She said, no, I still want to. And we do want to go to Florida. We do want to see them. And I know that we will build on that. But I just wanted to share that because I think some of you might think April does this all the time. She's interviewed hundreds of families. She's got it down. And I just want to tell all of you.
Still hard?
It's still hard. I didn't have all the answers. But I recognize I sent texts out to my friends and they were like, oh, cool. And then I sent a text out to my adoptive mom friends and they were like, call me.
Whoa. Yeah.
Call me right now. Tell me what happened. Because they just understand that this is hard. It's hard. It's hard what you signed up for. But if we do it right, it should be hard. Right?
Yeah. And each open adoption is different. They came to that point from different spaces, and then from that point of adoption forward, that relationship is going to be different as well. How do you navigate the relationship with Lily's birth mom versus the girl's birth mom?
Well, let's talk about that, because out of the blue, we have an open adoption with Lily's birth parents. And for the first couple of years, we talked to them. They were in and out. They broke up. They moved to different places, but they kept in touch. Then they disappeared. She reached out when Lily was, I want to say 6 or 7, and told me things about Lily's health that it was crazy, because it was right in a time when we were trying to figure out if Lily needed help and what kind of doctors we needed to take her to. And all of a sudden she was there to tell us like medical history and all this stuff. And then she was gone. And if you heard the episode that we released in the beginning of December 2024, Lily said her advice to adoptees are to forgive your birth parent, which was, my head exploded.
Yeah.
And we had all these conversations about it. And she just said, I'm happy. I mean, I love you. I'm happy I'm here. But like, some kids need to forgive and let go of that. Adoption is a part of their story. They didn't ask for that. And I just thought that was like a really big conversation. Well, her birth mom reached out to me out of the blue a day before that episode was released.
Oh, I was going to ask if she heard it and reached out. But
No. So then I'm like, oh no, she's reaching out. And, Lily said this like huge thing.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you that if you have lost connection with the birth family, but you loved them, you will still love them just as much. Because as she was reaching out to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just love this person. She is so empathetic. She is so kind. She was so encouraging to me. Like, she told me, I struggled a little bit with God, and I got into rehab, and I was angry with God, but I was never angry for choosing you. She said, you were who I wanted for Lily. And she said, so I was never angry that I placed, but she's like, I was angry that I was in the place that I had to place, right? I was angry about my life and what had happened. And I had to deal with a lot of things, but I came back to God and met Jesus. And I mean, she just told me her testimony, which was like so encouraging. And she's been clean. And she was telling me about some of her other children, because Lily's one of 9, last one. And it was just a really sweet conversation. She asked me so many questions about Lily. So many questions. What is she like? What's her hair like? Oh my goodness. I liked makeup too. Does she dance? I'm like, she doesn't dance. She's like, you know what she said? She said, April, you got to teach her. Remember, your grandma taught you everything. My
Remember
grandma
that about you.
did teach me everything. I couldn't believe after all these years, she remembered that my grandma was somebody really important to me, that she remembered things. I mean, my head was just blown. And it was a very honest and sweet conversation just about her. And she said, I want more for her. And, I think that's why birth parents place is because they want more for their child, right?
That's what Mila's birth parents said when we just, when we were able to sit down with them and say thank you and just get to know them a little bit better. They, without us even prompting it, they said we wanted more for this child, and we knew that she deserved the world. And if we were able to give her that, we wanted what was best for her and wanted more for her. And so that's how they came to the place of placing for adoption too. So
But even that is complex, because if they wanted more for Mila,
what
why
about the
didn't
other
they
9
want more for
or
the
8?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a question that then they will ask themselves is why did they get placed? I mean, it's a lot. It's a
so
lot to break
complex.
down. But I do know that Lily's birth mom was very, very sweet and said she's going to have opportunity that other children in my family did not have. And you were the one for her. And I'm again, I'm going to cry. I just felt so grateful, loved her just as much as I had loved her when I met her. And then I knew I was going to have to tell Lily about it. Now, remember what Lily was going to say the next day
Yeah.
to YouTube. So I sat Lily down and I said, I talked to your birth mom today. And she's like, and I said, I love her. I love her because she loves me and she picked me to be your mom. And she knows that you and I have a very close relationship. And she knows that Dad and I were going to be the ones to raise you and get you the help that you needed. And she didn't have parents like that. She didn't have parents that needed to step up to the plate and help her. And so she struggled and she didn't want that for you. And I said, would you ever want to meet her? And she said, no. And that kind of crushed my heart too, because that's a hard thing to hear also, no?
Right. Because you have a relationship with this person.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the means of communication is more important than we give it credit for too. Is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it an email?
Mhm.
And that's going to be different per situation
Right.
too, right? Lily doesn't even want to chat with her birth mom and her birth families. And that communication all goes through you. So there's a little bit more of that buffer. You know, unfortunately, whether you want to be or not, you're that buffer back and
Right.
forth for both of them. Whereas Vivi and Malia didn't have that when it was straight from them to birth mom.
Right. I think that it's fair to say every single story is different.
Different and complex.
Yes, because I am going to honor that she said that. And maybe one day her heart will soften and she'll be curious and she'll want to know. But right now, it's not for her. That's her favorite thing to say. It's not for me. Do you like this sweater? It's not for me.
That's valid.
You know,
She's not
do you
hurting
wanna
anybody
do
else's
this?
feelings. It's just not for her.
me. She said, I just want to be close to you right now, Mom. And she did, like, I could tell that she needed more from me. She like came around the table and she sat by me. And I said, I honor that. I respect that. But I want you to know if you do, it's open. I know where she is now. She lives in New York and we kind of had that conversation. But it was really good because I thought everybody has these different feelings. And as parents, we just have to respect that and say, okay, because I've met lots of people that have been adopted and they're like, I just never wanted to meet,
Mhm.
you know, my biological family. I just had no interest in it. And I always think, really? How you really feel? But maybe that's absolutely true. Maybe they just feel peace at where they were raised and they don't question it.
So through all of this, you have 3 open adoptions, but AJ's is closed.
Yeah.
Now, how does he feel? What is his experience as these girls are learning about
Right.
themselves or their birth families? How does AJ feel about that he doesn't have the opportunity to do so?
He kind of chimes in. I mean, he's a boy. I think often, not always, but boys have an easier time just being like, well, okay. He has a sibling. And so that is something that he is interested in is the sibling and letting the sibling know that he is alive and who he is. So he will talk more in that way, like when I meet my sibling. But as far as like, do you want to actually meet your birth family? He's like, maybe. And then we kind of talk about it. I'm like, what would you say? And, you know, can I be there?
And now you're loving it more than him.
Yeah. What am I going to wear? Don't, just kidding. No, but just letting him know, like, I would be there to support you if you needed me to go with you. And I would love to meet her. Oh my gosh, I would love to meet her because he's so amazing. I would love to say, he's such a brilliant child and everyone loves him. And she must be like that too. She must be. He must get it from her.
Got it.
And I would love that one day, but I know that that's closed until he's 18. So, and he only has 4 more years left.
That's not that far. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So he kind of just chimes in with the girls. I think he finds a lot of peace because the girls have this big, and that family loves AJ. Right. So it's also like interesting, like this is a birth family. It's not his, but he's also involved in that as well. So him going out there maybe would be exciting and also feels like he kind of has some sort of like connection to that. But I don't think for him, he spends a lot of time thinking about that whole other world.
Yeah. He's one of those kids that you're his parents and that's what he knows. And you are his parents and he is happy with that. He's happy with that answer. Doesn't need anything else. And he's fantastic.
He is fantastic. They're all fantastic.
They are.
All of the emotions and all of these things. It's what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to have this perfect life, right? Or just this life that you could maybe get a book on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I signed up for the hard and for the challenging. And I was aware of that. But as you're going through it, I think you just learn and change so much. So anyways, I just wanted to share a little bit of that because I think it's important for families to understand that if you're feeling certain things and you're struggling or you're confused, you're not the only one. We are pioneers in this open adoption conversation. And we're trying to do it right. And I think when our children see that we are in it to win it, that we are available, that we keep showing up, that we keep trying to talk about things, I think that that gives them a lot of peace and confidence that they're in an environment that's open. And you might not always say or do the right thing. You might cry and you're like, I didn't want to cry, but it's okay because you're going to show back up.
Mm-hmm. You're learning together. And this is your first time parenting, whether it's a 1, 2, 5, or 14-year-old. It's your first time being in this season of life with them as an adoptive parent. We're the pioneers of this open adoption world and this kind of new way of thinking. And I think our kids are going to be better for it.
How do you feel hearing these stories?
It's kind of terrifying because Mila is she's 18 months.
She's in her bubble.
So she doesn't even talk. She doesn't even, and for us, the only communication with her birth parents is through me. And so I feel like I kind of have that layer of protection, that I still have that protection for her of I can kind of decide, is this good? Is this maybe not so good? How will this impact Mila? I think the biggest difference for me is as she gets older and kind of crosses over into being able to make those decisions or even talking on FaceTime or deciding if she wants to do that, I have a little bit less control. I have a little bit less protection. And I'm an optimist. I'm a control freak and I'm an optimist. So that's a bad combination in a place that I have very little control. I pretend like I do, and I pretend like everything is fine and there's no complexities. But the reality is, it's so complex, it's hard, and it is a lifelong journey. Like you say all the time, lifelong. And so it will continue to evolve and change, and I'll just have to evolve and change with it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on the show and letting me talk about this. I also appreciate that you are in the position where you know that there's so much to learn. And I think that any mom listening to this, if it did overwhelm you, just stay in that place where you're like, I just want to learn so much about adoption and about how to parent an adopted child and how to love the family, even though it is hard. It's hard for all of us in the situation, because I think also there's healing for birth families too. And after I let the girls talk and FaceTime with their birth mom, she sent me the nicest, longest message I've ever gotten from her, and just said that it just helped her so much for the holidays, and it meant so much. And I knew that that was probably really hard for her. I knew she probably got off the phone and was just like seeing her 2 girls that look just like the girls and boys that she's raising. That had to have been really hard, but I'm sure in her heart she had peace that she got to see them, and they are doing really well. And so it's for them too, right? It's for everybody's healing, for everybody's growth as we kind of navigate through this. So I appreciate you coming on the show. And if you have more questions or if you have topics that you want us to discuss and talk about, please write us an email, join Patreon. That's a great place that you can share ideas. And if there's further conversations you want to have, we want you to be involved in Adoption Now. We want Adoption Now to grow, not only in the show, but as a community of people that are ahead of us or behind us. This is just a place for resources and encouragement.
Yeah. And thank you for being so vulnerable and telling your story, because I know there is more than one person that this is really going to resonate with, that they feel they're in the trenches and they're like, okay, April's done this, and they feel a little bit more empowered, a little bit more encouraged and prepared for those conversations. So it's really impactful that you show your vulnerability too.
Yeah, I don't love crying on camera, so
no.
Not my favorite, but we did it.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And thank you guys. We will see you next episode.
The Adoption Now podcast has been telling adoption stories for nearly a decade, and now's the time to dig a little deeper. Looking for behind-the-scenes content, bonus time with the Fallon family, a network of hundreds of others in the adoption triad, and a chance to influence the content you hear on the show? Join the Patreon community at patreon.com/adoptionnow. Did you know that we also offer one-on-one coaching sessions? Let us help you navigate the early steps or support you post-placement by joining the interest list on our website. And did this episode make an impact on you? Don't forget to share some love. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Adoption Now. See you next episode.
At the end of the day, I choose you.